Hey strategists, when they move with deception, outthink them psychologically, because this world doesn't celebrate the purest soul. It celebrates the sharpest awareness. Machiavelli never showed people how to become wicked. That's the excuse fragile minds use when they feel threatened by reality. What he actually revealed was far more powerful than wickedness. He revealed perception. He revealed endurance. He revealed how to remain standing in a room where everyone else is already bending. Look around your reality for a moment at your workplace, in your relationships. You'll observe something uncomfortable. The people who manipulate rarely appear hostile. They appear composed. They appear logical. They smile while quietly repositioning the pieces against you. Machiavelli grasped this centuries before us. Influence doesn't emerge from volume. It emerges from placement, from timing, from recognizing how people behave when they assume no one is paying attention. If someone moves against you unfairly, it's not because they're more capable than you. It's because they comprehend something you were never shown. They comprehend human patterns without the filter of ethics. They understand how assumptions operate. They understand how reactions betray vulnerability. They understand how stillness builds tension. And most critically, they understand that decent people pause. Decent people delay. They trust things will balance out. They anticipate reciprocity. They believe motives matter more than results. Those who play unfairly think differently. They don't strike strength. They strike assumptions. They wait for you to expect integrity. The instant you do, they advance. This video is not about becoming ruthless. It's not about deceiving, betraying, or damaging others. It's about recognizing the terrain you're already navigating. Because refusing to acknowledge the competition doesn't exempt you from it. It only makes you a convenient piece. Machiavelli never guaranteed tranquility. He guaranteed placement. He guaranteed vision in a world where vision is scarce. He guaranteed that once you comprehend how influence operates, you stop being startled by people's conduct. In the coming minutes, you'll discover 10 psychological frameworks Machiavelli identified long before algorithms, corporate maneuvering, and modern deception. These are not inspirational phrases. These are cognitive instruments, tools that help you stop reacting, stop justifying, and stop draining energy toward people who don't deserve access to your inner world. If you remain until the conclusion, you won't feel louder. You'll feel steadier, clearer, harder to disturb. Now, I want you to leave this declaration in the comments. I recognize the game. Number 1. Why deceptive players target good people. Machiavelli identified something most people resist accepting, because it challenges their self-perception before it challenges their reasoning. The individuals who get targeted most frequently are not fragile, naive, or incapable. They are principled. They are reliable. They are transparent. They conduct themselves identically in every circumstance, with every individual, anticipating the same ethical standard in return. And that reliability becomes a blueprint for anyone seeking to exploit them. Deceptive players don't pursue dominance directly. They pursue patterns. They notice who hesitates before responding, who extends trust freely, who struggles to let others down. They observe who grows uneasy with silence, who rushes to explain motives, who feels remorse for maintaining limits. These are not character defects. They are indicators, and indicators invite exploitation. A principled person presumes shared ethics. They presume boundaries are mutual. They presume equity is standard. That presumption is the entry point. The moment you trust the other party will behave as you would behave, you surrender control over tempo, framing, and conclusion. Deceptive players don't need to overpower you. They simply wait for you to self-restrict. Machiavelli recognized that ethics without perception becomes predictability. And predictability is not integrity in hostile environments. It is vulnerability. When someone knows precisely how long you'll endure disrespect, how much disorder you'll tolerate, how many opportunities you'll extend before resisting, they no longer need to speculate. They calculate. This explains why deceptive players feel secure escalating gradually. They probe with minor violations, a postponement, a misrepresentation, a subtle transfer of accountability. They monitor your response. If you remain courteous, they proceed. If you remain optimistic, they persist. If you clarify instead of observing, they recalibrate. Each response teaches them how far they can advance without repercussion. Principled people frequently assume restraint earns consideration. Machiavelli witnessed the reverse. Restraint without advantage invites pressure. When someone recognizes you will consistently choose harmony over placement, they no longer need to negotiate. They only need to wait. The hazard is not compassion. The hazard is being transparent. Deceptive players don't fear morality. They fear ambiguity. They fear individuals who don't expose thresholds prematurely. They fear those who don't hurry to restore equilibrium. They fear people who observe silently instead of correcting instantly. This is why Machiavelli cautioned against displaying virtue openly. Not because virtue lacks value, but because broadcasting it eliminates adaptability. When people understand exactly who you are constantly, they understand exactly how to destabilize you. The answer is not cruelty. It is strategic mystery. You don't need to alter who you are internally. You need to alter what you expose externally. You don't owe reliability to those who haven't demonstrated trustworthiness. You don't owe transparency to those gathering intelligence. You don't owe predictability to people who profit from your hesitation. Once you stop presuming decency, you reclaim advantage. Once you stop fearing stillness, you reclaim authority. Once you stop volunteering your boundaries, you stop being accessible. Drop this declaration in the comments. I move with perception. Number 2. The craft of controlled vulnerability. Machiavelli recognized that visible force attracts opposition, the way intensity attracts counterpressure. When capability is apparent, others adapt. They shield. They prepare. They consolidate. But when strength is concealed, people relax. They reveal themselves without recognizing what they're doing. This is where controlled vulnerability becomes tactical, not submissive. Deceptive players are perpetually scanning for dangers. They don't fear confrontation as much as they fear unpredictability. Obvious dominance is simple to counter. Silent capability is not. When you present yourself as entirely competent, entirely assured, and entirely aware, others become guarded. They communicate less. They offer less. They shield their angles. But when you permit small openings to appear, the atmosphere transforms. Controlled vulnerability is not feigning incompetence. It is permitting others to undervalue your perception, your capacity, or your direction. It is selecting when not to correct, when not to contest, when not to demonstrate comprehension. This discipline generates a false sense of security. People begin presuming they're ahead. They accelerate decisions. They over-explain. They expose priorities they would typically protect. Machiavelli noted that haste is a consequence of perceived superiority. When someone assumes you lack alternatives, they stop managing themselves cautiously. They speak more openly. They probe boundaries quicker. They escalate without establishing position. This is not arrogance. It is human nature responding to perceived dominance. The error most people commit is attempting to demonstrate competence prematurely. They clarify. They justify. They exhibit intelligence. In doing so, they terminate the flow of intelligence coming toward them. The instant others recognize you're monitoring everything, they cease revealing. Controlled vulnerability maintains the channel open. There's authority in allowing assumptions to persist uncorrected. If someone assumes you didn't observe a shift, a contradiction, or a maneuver, they feel secure repeating it. Patterns surface. Purpose becomes apparent. Timing becomes readable. What they consider invisibility is actually exposure. Machiavelli never recommended constant strength. He recommended selective demonstration. You determine when to assert, when to retreat, when to appear uncertain. This variation disrupts calculation. Others cannot establish a stable model of you. Without a model, they falter. Controlled vulnerability also neutralizes expectation. People anticipate resistance from capability. They don't anticipate patience from strength. When you don't respond the way they expect, their script fractures. They begin filling gaps. They start explaining themselves. They offer compromises prematurely. This method demands discipline. Ego desires recognition. Pride desires clarity. But exposing too much too quickly collapses the advantage. The objective is not to prevail early. The objective is to accumulate leverage quietly, when applied correctly. Controlled vulnerability transforms the observer into the director. You're no longer responding to pressure. You are shaping it. Others reveal boundaries while you conserve yours. Others accelerate while you stabilize. Machiavelli recognized that the most formidable person in the room is not the loudest. It is the one whose complete capability remains unknown until it matters. The instant you stop correcting every assumption, you start controlling the framework. Number 3. Why justifying yourself causes defeat. Machiavelli cautioned against excessive transparency, not because honesty is destructive, but because explanation transfers authority away from you. The instant you begin defending actions, intentions, or choices, you relinquish command over interpretation. What commenced as clarity becomes an opening. What seemed like openness transforms into advantage for the opposing side. Justifications invite assessment. Once you explain, others feel entitled to evaluate whether your reasoning is legitimate, adequate, or satisfactory. This alters the dynamic. You are no longer operating from position. You are pursuing validation. Deceptive players identify this immediately. They don't dispute your result. They dissect your reasoning because reasoning can be manipulated. Every explanation generates structure. Structure generates angles. Angles generate opportunities. The more specifics you supply, the more material exists to challenge, distort, or weaponize. Deceptive players are not listening to comprehend. They are listening to extract. They await inconsistencies, emotional language, or gaps they can reframe. Stillness functions differently. Stillness provides no surface to attack. It cannot be edited, quoted, or selectively recalled. What remains unspoken cannot be repositioned against you. Machiavelli recognized that withholding commentary preserves mystery and mystery shields influence. When others cannot fully decode your purpose, they hesitate to advance aggressively. Justifying also exposes priorities. When you defend, you reveal what concerns you, what you fear being misinterpreted about, and where pressure impacts you most. Deceptive players study these signals. They calibrate future approaches around them. What you considered honesty becomes a roadmap. There's also a psychological transition that occurs once you begin explaining. You become invested in being understood. This investment makes you reactive. You start correcting interpretations, clarifying tone, defending purpose. Each reply draws you deeper into their framework. The conversation ceases being about facts and becomes about narrative command. Machiavelli noted that authority rarely explains itself. It announces conclusions, not rationale. This is not conceit. It is positioning. When you act decisively, without excessive commentary, others adjust around you. When you over-communicate, others probe boundaries. Deceptive players frequently provoke explanations deliberately. They question, suggest confusion, or express mild disagreement, not to acquire clarity, but to prompt you into exposing more than necessary. Once you begin, stopping feels awkward. The trap closes quietly. Stillness compels others to project. In the absence of explanation, they fill voids with assumptions. Those assumptions reveal more about them than about you. Their tone shifts, their patience thins, their discomfort grows. This reversal places authority back where it belongs. This does not mean becoming evasive or misleading. It means recognizing that not every action requires commentary. Not every decision requires defense. Not every move benefits from transparency. Discernment replaces impulse. Machiavelli recognized that the less you explain, the fewer handles exist for manipulation. When you speak only when necessary, each word carries weight. When you explain constantly, words lose authority. Influence is preserved not by saying more but by choosing when stillness is stronger. Number 4. Deceptive players never attack, they position. Machiavelli noted that direct confrontation is rarely the preferred approach of those who understand influence. Open attacks generate resistance, visibility, and risk. Positioning, however, reshapes outcomes without friction. Deceptive players don't force you into conflict. They place you inside circumstances where any response operates against you. Instead of accusing, they suggest. Instead of opposing, they frame. Instead of challenging, they arrange conditions that restrict your options. You are not compelled to act. You are guided into acting. And once you respond, the environment has already been designed to make you appear impatient, emotional, or unreasonable. Positioning relies on context, not force. Deceptive players comprehend that perception is formed by surroundings, timing, and comparison. They wait until others are present. They select moments when you are rushed, exhausted, or under strain. They introduce variables quietly, then step back. When tension rises, they remain composed, allowing contrast to operate in their favor. Machiavelli recognized that reputation is rarely destroyed by accusation. It erodes through implication. When someone appears consistently collected while you appear reactive, observers draw conclusions without requiring instruction. Deceptive players don't need to discredit you openly. They let patterns accomplish the work. This is why defending yourself loudly frequently backfires. Defense confirms the framework that something requires defending. The more energy you invest in correcting perception, the more attention you attract to it. Deceptive players depend on this instinct. They anticipate you will rush in and clarify. They anticipate emotional urgency. That urgency becomes evidence. Positioning also operates through role assignment. You are cast into a part before you speak. The complainer, the difficult one, the impatient one. Once the role is established, every action is interpreted through that lens. Deceptive players don't dispute facts, they manage labels. Machiavelli advised understanding the stage before reacting on it. If you don't recognize how a situation is arranged, you will mistake manipulation for coincidence. You will respond to surface behavior while ignoring the structure beneath it. That structure determines outcome long before dialogue begins. The counter is not aggression. It is composure and observation. When you slow down, you disrupt the design. When you refuse to perform the expected role, the script weakens. When you respond minimally, the contrast vanishes. Positioning fails when there is no reaction to amplify. Deceptive players depend on predictability. They need you to defend, explain, or emote on cue. When you don't, they lose command over narrative. Flow. The environment they constructed stops functioning. Observers begin noticing inconsistencies. Machiavelli recognized that influence operates invisibly when permitted. The strongest response is frequently restraint. Let context speak without your interference. Let patterns reveal themselves. Let stillness deny momentum. Drop this declaration in the comments. I choose position. Number 5. Why fairness is a trap. Machiavelli recognized that fairness feels secure because it offers moral comfort, not because it guarantees balance. People cling to it believing outcomes will correct themselves over time. This belief collapses the moment one side abandons the rules while the other remains loyal to them. Fairness only functions inside shared agreement. Outside of that, it becomes exposure. Deceptive players identify when someone is committed to equal treatment regardless of context. They exploit that commitment by stepping outside limits. While expecting you to remain inside them, you hesitate. They advance, you calculate ethics, they calculate advantage. The mismatch determines the result before any exchange concludes. The trap of fairness is not kindness, it is rigidity. When you insist on equal standards in unequal environments, you eliminate your ability to adapt. Deceptive players depend on this. They know you will hesitate to escalate. They know you will avoid appearing excessive. They know you fear being perceived as unjust more than being disadvantaged. Machiavelli observed that justice without enforcement is symbolic. It communicates principles, but produces no consequence. Deceptive players are unmoved by symbols. They respond only to cost. When behavior carries no price, it repeats. When imbalance creates comfort, it deepens. Fairness also delays decision-making. While you assess what is appropriate, others act on what is effective. This delay is not neutral. It transfers momentum. Deceptive players understand tempo. They advance while others deliberate. By the time fairness is considered, the situation has shifted. There is also a psychological reward tied to fairness. It allows people to feel superior while losing position. This is why many intelligent individuals remain trapped. They confuse moral satisfaction with strategic success. Machiavelli warned against this illusion. Influence does not recognize intention. It recognizes outcome. Playing accurately is different. Accuracy responds to reality as it is not as it should be. It adjusts to behavior, not ideals. When someone crosses a line, accuracy responds proportionally, not politely. It introduces consequence without apology. It does not seek balance. It restores leverage. Deceptive players frequently accuse others of being unfair when control is threatened. This accusation is strategic. It triggers guilt. It pressures you to retreat into restraint. Machiavelli understood this maneuver well. The moment you begin defending fairness, you abandon advantage. Accuracy does not mean excess. It means precision. It means choosing responses that correct imbalance without drama. It means understanding when restraint serves you and when it serves the opposing side. It means knowing that rules are instruments, not anchors. Once you release the need to appear fair to those acting in bad faith, clarity returns. Decisions simplify, limits solidify. Others adjust quickly when they realize behavior carries consequence. Deceptive players respect enforcement, not ideals. Machiavelli did not dismiss justice. He contextualized it. He recognized that without influence, justice is decoration. With influence, it becomes structure. When you stop confusing fairness with strength, you stop losing quietly. Number 6. The psychology of delayed response. Machiavelli noted that speed frequently disguises itself as confidence. While patience is mistaken for hesitation, in reality, immediate reactions frequently serve the opposing side more than they serve you. Deceptive players depend on urgency. They push for quick answers, fast decisions, and instant emotional engagement because momentum reduces your ability to choose deliberately. A delayed response disrupts expectation. When others anticipate reaction and receive stillness instead, uncertainty forms. That uncertainty generates internal pressure. Minds begin racing to fill the gap. Motives are questioned. Strategies are reconsidered. The silence becomes active even though nothing is being said. Deceptive players are conditioned to manage situations through pace. They provoke, then observe for speed. Quick replies reveal priorities, emotional triggers, and tolerance thresholds. Delay eliminates these signals. Without feedback, they lose orientation. The advantage quietly shifts. Machiavelli recognized that time amplifies imbalance. Those who rush leak intelligence. Those who wait gather it. A pause permits you to observe shifts in tone, escalation attempts, or backtracking. What was initially confident frequently becomes restless. What was calculated begins to wobble. Delayed response also reverses emotional gravity. The person who waits controls attention. Others begin wondering what is being considered, what is being prepared, or what they may have misjudged. Anxiety grows in the absence of confirmation. This anxiety weakens position without confrontation. Importantly, delay is not avoidance. It is intentional withholding. Deceptive players anticipate friction or compliance. They rarely anticipate composure. Without explanation, this composure interrupts their script. They cannot proceed confidently without knowing where you stand. The pause denies them that clarity. Machiavelli observed that pressure reveals character over time. When reactions slow, impatience surfaces. Repeated follow-ups appear. Tone sharpens. Attempts to regain control increase. Each attempt exposes intent. Delay transforms the opposing side into the performer. There is also a reputational effect. Those who respond instantly appear reactive. Those who choose timing appear measured. Observers notice this contrast. Authority is associated with command over pace, not volume of response. Delayed reactions signal self-command. Many people fear that waiting appears weak. Deceptive players encourage this fear because it benefits them. In reality, restraint communicates confidence. Withdrawal communicates choice. Machiavelli recognized that influence is felt when it is unhurried. Delay also protects against manipulation through emotion. When feelings are given time to settle, clarity replaces impulse. Decisions made after pause are harder to redirect. Deceptive players depend on emotional immediacy. Remove that, and their influence fades. The objective is not to stall indefinitely. It is to choose timing that maximizes leverage. Respond when intelligence is sufficient. Move when pressure has shifted. Act when others are already exposed. Drop this declaration in the comments. I command the pace. Number 7. Why they attempt to confuse your identity. Machiavelli noted that control becomes effortless once a person loses internal certainty. When someone no longer trusts their own direction, they begin looking outward for confirmation. Deceptive players comprehend this deeply. Instead of attacking behavior, they target self-concept. Once identity becomes unstable, resistance collapses without force. This maneuver rarely appears aggressive. It arrives as commentary, subtle remarks, comparisons to a previous version, statements framed as concern. The objective is not correction, it is disorientation. When someone begins questioning whether they are acting in character, they slow down. They hesitate. They second-guess instinct. Identity confusion generates friction inside the mind. Energy that should be used for observation gets redirected towards self-evaluation. Deceptive players exploit this shift. While you are occupied wondering whether you are being reasonable, they continue advancing. Machiavelli recognized that stable identity generates consistency under pressure. When individuals know who they are and what they stand for, external influence weakens. Deceptive players attempt to fracture that stability. They imply deviation. They suggest loss of authenticity. They frame change as decline. This manipulation operates because most people tie self-image to external validation. When others challenge that image, discomfort arises. The desire to correct perception activates. Behavior becomes reactive. The person attempts to prove alignment with the past rather than acting in the present. Confusion also disrupts boundary enforcement. When someone doubts their own stance, they hesitate to assert limits. Deceptive players recognize this hesitation and apply pressure there. They don't need to overpower. They simply wait for uncertainty to accomplish the work. Machiavelli observed that rulers fell not from attack but from loss of clarity. Once identity fractured, decisions became inconsistent. Inconsistency invited challenge. Challenge invited collapse. The same principle applies on a smaller scale. Internal division weakens external position. The defense is internal anchoring. Identity must be defined privately, not socially. When values and direction are self-established, external commentary loses impact. Others may question, but doubt does not take root. Decisions remain grounded. Deceptive players depend on the assumption that you need agreement to proceed. When that assumption fails, their leverage disappears. You are no longer guided by approval or disapproval. You act from alignment, not reassurance. This does not mean rigidity. Growth involves change. But change chosen intentionally is strength. Change induced through confusion is weakness. Machiavelli understood the difference. He warned against letting others define who you should be in moments of pressure. When identity is anchored internally, manipulation becomes visible. Attempts to destabilize feel obvious. Rather than persuasive, you recognize the maneuver and disengage. Emotionally, without emotional access, influence fails. The strongest position is not constant certainty. It is self-trust. When you trust your internal compass, external noise fades. Deceptive players lose the ability to guide behavior because there's nothing loose to pull. Clarity is not loud. It is steady. And steadiness makes manipulation expensive. Number 8. The most undervalued weapon in consistency. Machiavelli recognized that stability comforts observers, but uncertainty unsettles those seeking control. When behavior becomes too consistent, it transforms into a pattern others can anticipate. Anticipation generates planning. Planning generates leverage. Deceptive players depend on this sequence. They do not fear capability. They fear unpredictability. Controlled inconsistency is not disorder. It is selective variation. It means choosing when to be available and when to be distant, when to engage and when to withhold. This variation disrupts expectation. Others cannot settle into a reliable rhythm around you. Without rhythm, influence weakens. Deceptive players thrive on prediction. They probe reactions, map habits, and measure response time. Once they understand your default behavior, they design approaches around it. Inconsistency breaks that design. When reactions shift without explanation, calculation fails. Machiavelli favored irregularity because it generates psychological friction. People become cautious when outcomes vary. They slow down. They question assumptions. They hesitate before acting. This hesitation returns authority to you without confrontation. Predictable behavior also invites entitlement. When people understand what to expect, they begin assuming access. They anticipate replies, availability, and accommodation. Inconsistency interrupts entitlement. It reintroduces boundaries without announcement. Deceptive players frequently interpret consistency as obligation. They push against it, knowing you will respond identically each time. Irregularity removes this advantage. When access is not guaranteed, behavior adjusts. Respect increases quietly. Inconsistency also protects intelligence. When responses are uniform, others infer intent. When variation exists, intent remains unclear. This ambiguity prevents strategic targeting. Deceptive players cannot plan effectively without understanding how you will react. Machiavelli recognized that control requires familiarity. The less familiar you become, the harder you are to manipulate. This does not mean chaos. It means refusing to offer a fixed version of yourself to everyone. Many people fear that inconsistency appears unstable. Deceptive players exploit this fear. They pressure others into maintaining predictability by labeling variation as unreliable. In reality, controlled inconsistency signals autonomy. It communicates choice. The key is intentionality. Randomness without purpose generates confusion. Variation with awareness generates authority. Each shift should serve positioning, not impulse. Machiavelli emphasized command over appearance, not abandonment of discipline. When inconsistency is applied correctly, others adapt to you instead of you adapting to them. They wait, they observe, they hesitate. The advantage reverses. You are no longer reacting within their framework. They are adjusting within yours. Drop this declaration in the comments. I am unpredictable. Number 9. Why walking away generates fear. Machiavelli identified that disengagement unsettles those who depend on reaction. Deceptive players anticipate involvement. They anticipate argument, defense, or explanation. Participation confirms relevance. When you remove yourself, the structure they depend on collapses. Walking away denies reinforcement. Without response, effort loses purpose. Deceptive players measure influence by attention received. When attention disappears, uncertainty replaces confidence. They begin questioning effectiveness, timing, and impact. Absence disrupts narrative command. As long as you remain present, others shape interpretation. They assign motives, frame intentions, and guide perception. When you exit, that control weakens. There is no immediate behavior to reinterpret. Stillness generates a vacuum. Machiavelli recognized that presence equals access. Access permits pressure. Removal blocks leverage. When you disengage, you deny opportunities for provocation, escalation, or extraction. Deceptive players lose their stage. Walking away also signals self-sufficiency. It communicates that outcomes do not depend on engagement. This challenges assumptions. Deceptive players frequently believe others need resolution, closure, or validation. When that need is absent, their influence diminishes. Fear rises from uncertainty. When you exit without explanation, others are left guessing. They wonder whether they misjudged, overreached, or lost control. This uncertainty shifts focus inward. Instead of targeting you, they reassess themselves. Machiavelli noted that influence is frequently maintained through dependency. When others depend on response, negotiation, or acknowledgement, influence persists. Walking away breaks dependency. It demonstrates autonomy without confrontation. Many people remain engaged out of habit. They believe participation equals strength. Deceptive players encourage this belief because it benefits them. In reality, restraint communicates confidence. Withdrawal communicates choice. Walking away also preserves energy. Engagement drains focus. Disengagement restores clarity. When you step back, perspective returns. You observe from distance rather than reacting from within. This repositioning weakens external influence. There is also a reputational shift. Those who disengage calmly appear unbothered. Those seeking reaction appear invested. Observers notice this contrast. Authority gravitates toward those who do not chase outcome. Machiavelli recognized that fear is not always loud. It frequently appears as confusion, second-guessing, or hesitation. Walking away generates all three. Deceptive players are left without confirmation that their maneuvers worked. That doubt lingers. This does not mean permanent disappearance. It means choosing when presence serves you. Engagement should be strategic, not habitual. When walking Away becomes an option. Leverage returns. The strongest signal you can send is not resistance. It is indifference. When others realize they cannot provoke, persuade, or pressure you into engagement, they reconsider their approach. Walking away removes their audience, their leverage, and their narrative. What remains is uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds caution. Influence does not need to argue. Sometimes it simply exits. Number 10. The final Machiavellian truth. Machiavelli never promised harmony. He recognized that peace is temporary but position endures. Those who seek constant resolution place themselves in vulnerable cycles. Those who focus on placement rise above recurring conflict. The final truth is not about winning exchanges. It is about becoming unreachable. Deceptive players operate where access exists. They provoke where reaction is likely. They invest energy where influence is possible. When those channels close, effort stops. Machiavelli identified that true influence is not confrontation. It is cost. When interacting with you becomes expensive, behavior changes. Becoming untouchable does not require dominance. It requires self-command. When reactions are measured, explanations are minimal. And engagement is selective. Others adjust. They probe less. They push less. They redirect attention elsewhere. Influence fades naturally. The objective is not control over others. It is control over self. Once that is established, external manipulation loses traction. Deceptive players thrive on emotional access. Remove access and tactics weaken. Without feedback, pressure cannot calibrate. Machiavelli recognized that position is maintained through consistency of principle, not predictability of behavior. Values remain stable. Expression varies. This balance confuses those seeking leverage, while grounding those observing. Untouchability also alters reputation. People sense when boundaries exist without being announced. They feel when engagement is optional, not reactive. This perception changes treatment. Interactions become cautious. Behavior moderates. Many believe respect is demanded. Machiavelli noted that it is earned indirectly. When you do not chase outcomes, outcomes chase you. When you do not argue narratives, narratives dissolve. When you do not defend identity, identity stabilizes. The final truth is simple but difficult. Influence is not loud. It is quiet alignment. It adjusts environments rather than reacting within them. It shapes context instead of debating content. Deceptive players cannot operate effectively in environments they do not control. Becoming costly does not mean being distant from everyone. It means reserving access for those who respect boundaries. It means choosing where energy flows. It means understanding that availability is leverage. Machiavelli did not advise isolation. He advised selectivity. Influence remains strongest when engagement is intentional, when presence is earned, not automatic. This selectivity forces others to self-regulate. Once people realize that provoking you produces no return, strategies shift. Attention moves, pressure dissipates. You are no longer a useful target. Not because you defeated anyone, but because interaction no longer benefits them. This is the final Machiavellian lesson. The objective is not domination. It is elevation beyond reach. When your internal state cannot be manipulated, external behavior loses relevance. Position is freedom, and freedom is the ultimate advantage. Closing. If they move unfairly, don't mirror their chaos. Mirroring keeps you inside their framework. It keeps you reacting to rules you didn't design. Outhinking them psychologically is not about tricks. It's about clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you permit, and where your energy goes. Everything you've absorbed in this video points to one truth. Influence doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain itself to feel secure. Influence adjusts the environment and lets others expose themselves. The moment you stop reacting on command, the moment you stop fearing stillness, the moment you stop proving your intentions, something shifts. People become cautious around you, not because you threaten them, but because they can't read you anymore. And unreadable people are expensive to deal with. You don't need to confront every move. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Your purpose is not to be liked. Your purpose is to be positioned. Once people realize you don't chase outcomes, don't beg for clarity, don't panic under pressure, they stop moving unfairly with you. not out of morality, out of self-interest, because manipulation only operates where access is cheap. Remember this, you don't become influential by adding noise. You become influential by removing predictability. If this video helped you perceive the game more clearly, if it gave you language for things you've sensed but couldn't express, do 3 things right now. Like this video so it reaches people who need awareness, not comfort. Share it with someone who keeps getting outmaneuvered without understanding why. And subscribe to the channel because the next videos will go even deeper into influence, psychology, and mental command. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which principle struck hardest. And remember, you don't win by moving dirty. You win by becoming untouchable. Stay sharp, stay aware, and never play a game you don't understand.